It's 1979. The highly skilled, highly talented Ralph McQuarrie, the man proud more visually responsible for the look of Star Wars than old George Lucas himself, is feverishly creating matte paintings for an upcoming film called The Empire Strikes Back alongside Harrison Ellenshaw and Michael Pangrazio. And I mean, look at this. I bet you probably thought that was a model of the Millennium Falcon, not a matte painting. Boy, that's just good stuff. But now it's the 2020s and matte paintings have been dead for 25, 30 years, haven't been killed by computer graphics. Well, we got generative AI now. It's really just machine learning. And we can use that to generate our own matte paintings as well as rotoscope the actors the f*** out of our scenes.
Radical.
Back in the old days, they were using projectors and painting on glass, and then came green screen, digital matting, and then those weird LED walls everyone in Hollywood's got a boner for. You can just go out and shoot on location and matte extra elements in your scene using AI. I'm not going to say that it's a game changing, but someone like me can certainly use it to make interesting things and guss up our crappy films, right? And by doing that, by not just standing in front of a green screen, including foreground and maybe some of the original background elements even, maybe we can start to sell the illusion a little bit. Yeah? So let's get started. But maybe not, because the keyboard warriors and their ethics already goddamn talked about that enough. Find your way to your desktop computer. Make sure to take time to reflect on how you're wasting your life manipulating digital information that doesn't even really exist, and then drag your raw video clip into DaVinci Resolve or your buggier but somehow industry standard non-linear video editor of choice. That's right, I'm making a crappy sci-fi film, mostly due to that lovable scamp Joel Haver and his delightful Oscar movie challenge. Now these stills might look okay, but don't worry, it won't be a good film. It's mostly still just me mumbling and stumbling in the camera like I already do, but I'll post it here to YouTube in a few weeks to collect my 30 views. Now, you could use depth maps in DaVinci or After Effects or whatever to rotoscope a green screen, but I'm not going to do that because f*** Adobe and any company that forces you to permanently lease their product like you're a goddamn serf tilling my lord's fields in 1327. So we're going to use this open source GitHub library instead. Here's our original video shot with an 85mm Nikon AI at, I'm guessing, f8 with an ND filter. And I want to pull one clean frame from it for use with in-painting and Stable Diffusion, so we'll resize it to a resolution Stable Diffusion can handle. And we'll also resize it to 4K to use as the background input with Background Matting V2. You can use Comfy UI for in-painting, and we'll try it later, but right now we're going to stick with rickety old 111. I resized my input image to 720, but if you're stinking filthy rich and can afford to generate Ultra HD images with your upper crust video card, well then, by all means, go ahead. I think it helps if your background and foreground are separated by something more than a flat horizon line, and you have edges and curves and things like that. That'll help us sell the illusion later. I think that's why a lot of these matte paintings in older films look so good and hold up, because there's no clearly defined boundary here. The projection is a complicated shape, so you can't really tell where the matte painting ends and the shot begins, if you know what I mean. We have our in-paint selected now, so let's generate, I don't know, 50 images? One of them's bound to be acceptable. When people say AI looks like shit, well yeah, of course it does. It's AI, it's always going to be a little derpy. That's why you gotta generate hundreds of images and bash 2 or 3 together to fix all the things the AI f***ed up and get something close to what you had in mind. You just don't use whatever Midjourney or Sora or Stable Diffusion spits out at you directly unless you want your films to have the aesthetic appeal of old Pete Burns. Now, while that's happening, let's pull the matte of our human using the Background Matting V2 GitHub project. You can also use RobustVideoMatting if you don't have the background image by itself, but I don't think it's nearly as accurate. So if you don't know how to use open source machine learning GitHub projects in Python, it's not too hard. You just have to set up a new con environment, install the right version of Python, CUDA, and PyTorch, and endlessly pip install dependencies until the thing runs. And then do that for every AI tool you want to use, every time. It's a lot of fun. I have nothing bad to say about Python or any of its dependencies. Truly, it's a brilliant language, but hey, it's free. And since all these AI companies are going for the title of AI Adobe with their greedy, greasy ways and Adobe with the rubber duck, I'm going to use the open source tools as much as I can. You hear me, Shantanunarian C of Adobe? You suck! Take that, you pathetic a millionaire. Jeez, not even a billionaire? What a fucking loser! Anyway, I've got a 1080p video, so I used DaVinci's upscale thing to make it 4K because I figure it's better give the green screen matting AI the highest resolution possible. I used the default script from the Google Collab and changed it to point to the background image we made earlier in the 4K video we just made, and it actually doesn't take that long to run this thing on my 3060. And once it's done, we have a pretty good green screen matte, but you know, it's not perfect. But whatever really is. It also gives you these cool James Bond mats you can do something with, I guess, maybe. Then you just gotta pull the green screen as you would in DaVinci. Don't really have any tips for this, just kind of a skill you gotta learn. Then I like to take all the Stable Diffusion images we made, sort through them, and pick the best ones. Now, one thing we gotta watch out for is that Stable Diffusion, at least 1.5, I feel like it sucks at keeping the horizon line. Like, this one is fine, and this one, it's disappeared, and it's lower, and there's not much perspective here, but yeah, it also kind of sucks when it comes to perspective. We'll talk more about perspective later. But you know, this is something we'll have to watch out for, and it's the little things like this where the AI goes psycho boy. That's where you need a human, that's where you need an eye or some experience with the visual arts so you can come in and mop up the AI's dirty butt after it takes a big old dump on whatever you're trying to do. I'm just doing some preliminary tests here to save some time before we take these images into Photoshop and clean them up a bit. So you can make this another green screen matte, but I think a transparent PNG lets you blend the alpha channel a little bit more smoothly in your video, and hey, this is starting to look pretty good. One thing you might have to do if the green screen wasn't completely perfect, and it won't be, is just layer that original video on top of your matte and use it to plug up any holes in the green screen. At least that's what I do. And then I'll just go in and add some birds flying here. At some point, we'll make this thing a compound clip so we can add our grade and all our little sparkly razzle on top of the whole thing. Here I am doing just that with some light rays, but basically your grade is what's going to pull all the elements together. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about how I do my grade, but basically I like to try to do a little bit of film emulation, you know, a little bit of elevation, a little bit of glow, a little bit of mist, a little bit of grain. Because pure digital footage tends to look like, you know, Madonna anytime over the past 25 years. Madonna's still alive, right? We're good to make fun of her? Okay, good, because you get to be my age and all the celebrities from your childhood start popping off left and right, and it becomes hard to keep track of them, and it'll happen to you one day, Gen Z. You know, that Post Malone fella, one day he's gonna be old and his skin's gonna be all saggy and his face tattoos are gonna be all melty and gross looking, and you're gonna say, God damn, Adam was right. Time is a spinning wheel that stops for no man. I haven't forgotten about you, Gen Alpha, with your Skadooby toilet. If you really want to go nuts, you can kind of motion blur the edges between the background and the matte, but is anyone going to notice or care about that? I don't know. So I kept tweaking the matte a bit because I wasn't really satisfied with the horizon line. Settled on this one, which was a bit more realistic feeling. Then I added some blowing sand, and then I felt like, you know, I kind of like that first one, and so the solution was to go back and paint some of that original horizon line back into the image, and then I thought, you know, let's put the clouds on their own layers so that they can move slightly, even though that's not really realistic, and now I'm happy enough with it, at least for the moment. And, you know, that's a lot of work for a 12-second clip, but why not give a shit about the things you do, you know? Half the world's phoning everything in, so if you can sit there and care about and obsess over the tiny little details, then maybe if you can get into a position where you got other people working on your stuff with you, maybe they'll give a shit too, huh? Probably not. So the next mat was pretty much the same thing. Here's the raw video clip of it, but I was having trouble generating something that looked good, and so I decided pretty early on that I was probably gonna keep the existing sky. So we just needed to put a couple buildings in the background, which seemed simple enough, but it was all looking kind of off, and if you have any kind of experience with drawing or painting, you probably already see what's going on here. But I got pretty far along into this process before I realized, oh, the AI isn't really taking perspective into account. Yeah, Stable Diffusion 1.5 isn't really good at perspective, like at all. Now to be fair, this shot is kind of screwy. The camera's not exactly level, and we have whatever extra perspective distortion going on from the 17mm lens, but still. Just for fun, I fired up Comfy UI to give Stable Diffusion XL a shot at perspective. See, I can't get SDXL inpainting working with this size resolution and automatic because my video card runs out of RAM, the stupid son of a bitch. So if you don't know, inpainting in Comfy UI is kind of weird. If you're going to use the actual inpainting VAE, then you have to set the denoise to 100%, and then whatever you inpaint doesn't really match the image so well. So what you can do is use the regular image encoder with a latent mask. It works okay, and it turns out Stable Diffusion XL handles perspective a lot better. But I don't really like how it renders buildings, so I went on Civet AI and tried to find some, post-apocalyptic LoRa's for SDXL, and it works okay, but I also feel like whether it's the inpainting limitations of Comfy or SDXL or whatever, the lighting doesn't carry over into the inpaint either. But I'd rather have matching lighting over correct perspective because I can just rotate the buildings in my map painting slightly if I need to. That's what I ended up doing, and adjusting the brightness of these buildings, adding some chromatic aberration just because my camera and lenses aren't the best, using my eye to fix stuff, blah 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 blah. And I'm not 100% happy with it, but it works. And if you're making a movie, you can't spend all your time infinitely tweaking one or two shots.
Come and knock on our door.
Come and knock on our door.
We've been waiting for you.
We've been waiting for you.
That's it, John. Practice makes perfect.
You'll survive, John. You will find strength within yourself, and you will prevail.
Where have you been? We've been waiting for you.
So for the third shot, I wanted to try inpainting, an out of focus background with bokeh and all that kind of thing because, shallow depth of field is a pretty common thing in movies these days. Here's the original video, shot on a Nikon AIS 35mm at f2. So again, we do the inpainting, and again we can see that the AI really wants to drop the horizon line for whatever reason. Not sure why it wants to do that. So it's actually pretty good at making a blurry background. If I put f1.4 into the prompt and similar things like that, it seems to understand it, but it doesn't quite match the bokeh of my lens, so I kind of did, some Photoshop work to get it looking a little better. When it came time to pull the green screen mat, with this window frame here, I don't think it came out the absolute cleanest, so I think with foreground objects you have to be careful. But I can't really complain, I just went in there and masked off the original video as needed. And I have kind of a flashback thing going on here in the grade, so I think it looks okay. And that's basically it, just a quick little video about AI and using Stable Diffusion to make map paintings, and I just want to say, I think map paintings are pretty cool. Look, I know everything's CGI now, and all the big productions are using LED panels with Unreal Engine so they can get the VFX background into the camera, into the lens, and that's fine, it looks great, but I think there's something to be said for the old school technology of map painting. A lost art form we really don't see much of anymore. And a lot of those old films were works of art. At least they had pieces of hand-painted art in them, so I think the irony with AI right now, and people complaining about it taking the jobs of artists, when you're using it for something like map painting, a completely dead art form, I think you're bringing them back a little bit of artistry into filmmaking. Because you're going to have to go in and tweak things by hand, use your brain and your eyes in a way that you don't really have to do with traditional CGI. becomes more about sleight of hand and trying to sell the illusion again, which was the beginnings of visual effects, really. I don't know. To me, it's all a bit ironic people worried about AI taking the jobs of artists when, at least in the film industry, computers have made the work of map painters, prop masters, and physical modelers obsolete for decades now. You got digital VFX artists, but is that really art? Is that artistry, or is it just digital servitude? Why not let AI free us from the monotony of a million useless fucking clicks? I guess what people are really worried about is AI taking that final job, the job of the filmmaker. But if you're worried about that, brother, you understand all about filmmaking and storytelling. Go touch some grass. Or at least smoke some.